Ladies, sometimes the most powerful thing a woman can do in a relationship is not speak. Not argue, not explain, not chase. Just step back and become quiet. Because the truth is, when you and a boss are constantly talking, explaining your feelings, asking questions, and trying to fix things, a man can easily hide what he really feels. Your voice fills the space so much that his heart never has to reveal itself. But the moment you stop talking, something very interesting happens. The silence creates a mirror, and suddenly he has to face his own emotions. When a woman stops reaching out, stops explaining herself, and stops trying to keep the connection alive all by herself, a man and a boss's true feelings begin to surface. See, people reveal who they truly are when the pressure is gone. When there is no one chasing them, no one reminding them, and no one holding the door open for them emotionally. In that quiet space, his real intentions, his real level of care, and his real emotional investment begin to show. Silence is not weakness. Silence is information. It reveals who values your presence and who was simply comfortable with your effort. And when you stop talking, you give a man the opportunity to show whether he truly feels something for you or whether he was just enjoying the attention you were giving him. Ladies, many women, Don and Apas, fully realize the emotional energy they bring into a man and Apas' life. It and Apas, not just the words you speak or the messages you send. It and Apas, the presence you create. When you check on him, when you ask how his day was, when you laugh with him, support him, listen to him, and share pieces of your life with him, you are giving something far more powerful than simple conversation. You are giving emotional warmth. That warmth becomes part of his routine, part of his comfort, and part of the atmosphere surrounding his life. The thing about human beings is that we often, Don and Apas, recognize the value of something while it is constantly present. When something is always there, we slowly begin to treat it like the background of our lives. Not necessarily because we, Don and Apas, care, but because we get used to it. Your messages become something he expects to see. Your attention becomes something he assumes will continue. Your emotional support becomes something he knows he can return to whenever he wants it. But when you stop talking, when you stop reaching out, when you stop filling the silence with your effort, something shifts in a way many men, Don and Apas, expect. The energy disappears, and suddenly the space feels different. At first, he may not immediately recognize what has changed. His mind might just register that something feels quieter than usual. Maybe he notices his phone, Iason and Apas, lighting up the same way it used to. Maybe he realizes that the small conversations that once filled his day are no longer there. The little jokes, the random check-ins, the late-night talks, the emotional encouragement, all of it suddenly becomes absent. That absence begins to create awareness. You see, when you were constantly speaking, constantly trying to maintain connection, he didn't in a past have to do much emotional reflection. The relationship energy was flowing because you were helping carry it forward. But once you remove your voice from the situation, once you remove your effort, the environment changes. There is now a silence that Wolfson and Apas there before. And silence has a powerful effect on the human mind. Silence makes people think. A man who has grown used to your presence will begin to feel that something important is missing, even if he can and Apas explain it right away. He might start wondering why the communication stopped. He may think back to previous conversations, replaying moments in his head, trying to understand what changed. Sometimes he will even begin to question his own behavior. Did he take you for granted? Did he ignore something important? Did he assume you would always be there no matter how little effort he gave? These questions begin to surface because your silence removes the comfort of certainty. When a woman is always reaching out, a man feels secure in the idea that the connection will continue without him needing to question it. But when that effort disappears, the certainty disappears with it. And now he must confront the reality of your absence. This is where a man and Apas' true emotional awareness begins to grow. Because feelings that were once quiet, hidden beneath routine and comfort, now have space to rise to the surface. He begins to notice the difference between having you there and not having you there. Your laughter is gone. Your curiosity about his life is gone. Your supportive words are gone. Your emotional presence is gone. And the more he notices that absence, the more he begins to realize how much space you actually occupied in his world. Many women think their silence means they are becoming invisible. But the truth is often the opposite. When your energy disappears, it becomes more noticeable than when it was constantly there. Your silence highlights the space you once filled. Now here is the important part. This silence does not force a man to care. It simply reveals whether he already cared. If your presence truly mattered to him, he will begin to feel the loss. He will notice the emotional quiet around him. He will wonder why things changed, and that curiosity will push him to reach out, to reconnect, or to understand what happened. But if he never placed real value on your presence, the silence will reveal that as well. Because a man who was only casually involved, a man who was only enjoying convenience or attention, will not feel the same emotional shift. His life will continue almost exactly the same, because he never truly allowed your presence to become meaningful in his heart. And that realization may be painful, but it is also powerful information. Because silence removes illusion. When you are constantly talking, explaining, and trying to keep things alive, it becomes very difficult to see the truth clearly. Your effort can mask his lack of effort. Your emotional investment can cover up his emotional distance. But when you step back and allow silence to exist, the balance of energy becomes visible. You begin to see whether he steps forward or stays where he is. You begin to see whether he notices your absence or ignores it. You begin to see whether your presence was truly valued or simply expected. And the beautiful thing about this process is that you, Don and Apost, have to fight for answers. You, Don and Apost, have to argue, demand explanations, or convince someone to recognize your worth. The silence allows reality to unfold naturally. A man who truly felt something for you will eventually feel the weight of that missing energy. He will recognize that something meaningful has changed. But a man who never invested emotionally will simply let the silence continue. Either way, your silence gives you clarity that words often cannot. And sometimes clarity is the most powerful thing a woman can receive, because once you truly see where you stand in someone in a post's heart, you are finally free to decide what you deserve next. One of the most fascinating things about human psychology is that people often become more aware of something when it suddenly changes. When everything follows the same pattern every day, the mind relaxes into that routine. We stop questioning it. We stop analyzing it. We simply expect it to continue. This happens in relationships more often than many women realize. When a woman is always the one reaching out, always the one starting conversations, always the one keeping communication alive, a pattern forms. And once that pattern becomes normal, the man begins to assume that the rhythm of the connection will continue exactly the same way tomorrow. But the moment you stop talking, the moment you stop reaching out, the moment you stop filling the space with messages and conversations, the pattern breaks. And when a pattern breaks, curiosity immediately wakes up in the human mind. Curiosity is a powerful emotional trigger. People naturally want to understand what they cannot easily explain. When something changes without warning, the brain begins searching for answers. That search creates attention, and attention is the first step toward emotional awareness. Think about it this way. When you were constantly present in his daily life, there was no mystery about you. He knew you would respond. He knew the conversation would continue. He knew that whenever he looked at his phone, there was a good chance you had already reached out. Everything felt predictable. And while predictability can feel comfortable, it can also make people less aware of the value they are receiving. But when you stop talking, that predictability disappears. Now he notices the quiet. He might pick up his phone out of habit, expecting to see your message, and suddenly realize that nothing is there. At first, it may seem like a small thing, but small changes often trigger larger thoughts. His mind begins to ask questions without him even realizing it. Why Hassan and Apash she reached out today? Is she busy? Did something happen? Is she upset about something I said? These questions begin to circulate in his mind because the usual pattern has been interrupted. The certainty he once felt about the connection is no longer there. And uncertainty naturally creates curiosity. Curiosity then leads him to think about you more than he did before. He may start remembering previous conversations. He might scroll back through old messages. He may replay moments in his head, trying to figure out if there was a turning point where things changed. The absence of your voice becomes noticeable because it used to be a regular part of his environment. Sometimes a man does not realize how often he heard from you until he stops hearing from you. That silence becomes like a missing sound in a familiar song. Now here is something important to understand. Curiosity does not automatically mean love, but curiosity can awaken feelings that were quietly sitting beneath the surface. When a man begins thinking about why your behavior changed, he also begins thinking about how your presence affected him. He may start asking himself deeper questions. Why does it feel strange not talking to her? Why do I keep checking my phone? Why am I wondering what she and Apo's doing right now? These questions create emotional awareness. Before the silence, he may not have been thinking about the connection in a serious way. Everything was simply happening naturally because you were helping carry the conversation forward. But now the dynamic has shifted. The silence forces him to reflect on the relationship rather than simply participating in it passively. And reflection can lead to realization. He may begin to recognize that your attention was something he enjoyed more than he admitted. Your conversations may have been something he looked forward to without consciously acknowledging it. The emotional support you gave him may have been something that quietly made his life feel easier. But because it was always there, he never had to analyze it. Your silence changes that. When something disappears from our routine, the brain begins to measure its value. The absence creates a contrast that makes the original presence easier to understand. It and Apost similar to how people dawn and Apost fully appreciate quiet until they experience noise, or how they dawn and Apost fully appreciate light until they experience darkness. The absence highlights the importance of what used to be there. Now he starts wondering about you in ways he didn't and Apost before. What is she doing right now? Why Hassan and Apost she said anything? Is she moving on? Is she talking to someone else? These thoughts begin to grow because uncertainty often makes the mind more active than certainty ever did. When someone knows exactly where they stand with you, they may not feel the need to question it. But when that certainty disappears, the mind begins searching for answers. That search often brings your value into clearer focus. He may realize that your presence brought a sense of connection into his life. He may notice that the conversations he had with you were different from the conversations he has with other people. He may begin to miss the emotional tone you brought into his day, and sometimes that curiosity grows strong enough to push him into action. He may send a message just to see if you respond. He may ask how you and Apo's been. He may try to restart the conversation because he now feels the gap your silence created. But the important part is that you did not have to chase that reaction. You did not have to beg for attention. You did not have to convince him to notice you. Your silence allowed his curiosity to wake up on its own. And if his curiosity leads him back toward you, then you know the connection meant something to him. But if the silence continues and he never shows interest in reconnecting, that also gives you valuable clarity. Because a man who truly feels something will eventually become curious about losing that connection. Silence removes the comfort of predictability, and when predictability disappears, curiosity steps in. That curiosity becomes the bridge between routine and realization. It pushes him to look at the connection with fresh eyes and ask himself questions he never asked when everything felt easy. And sometimes those questions are exactly what reveal the feelings he didn't and Apost even realize he had. One of the most important truths a woman can understand in relationships is the difference between a man valuing her and a man enjoying the attention she gives him. These two things can feel very similar at the beginning, but they are not the same. Attention can create the illusion of connection. It can make a situation feel warm, exciting, and emotionally engaging. But attention alone does not always mean a man is emotionally invested in building something meaningful with you. Many men enjoy being admired. They enjoy knowing that someone is thinking about them, caring about them, checking on them, and showing interest in their life. That attention can make them feel important, appreciated, and emotionally comfortable. But feeling comfortable receiving attention is very different from feeling responsible for nurturing a real relationship. This is where silence becomes powerful. When you are constantly communicating, constantly asking questions, constantly sharing your emotions, and constantly making yourself available, the attention you provide becomes part of his daily environment. It becomes something he receives without having to earn it. The messages come, the care comes, the effort comes. And because it continues regularly, he may not stop to question whether he is giving the same energy back. In that situation, it becomes very difficult for you to see the truth clearly. Your effort fills the space so completely that his lack of effort can easily hide inside it. The connection continues, but it may continue primarily because you are carrying the emotional weight. But the moment you stop talking, the moment you stop providing that constant attention, the entire dynamic shifts. Now the attention disappears, and this is when the truth begins to reveal itself. A man who genuinely values you as a person will feel that absence almost immediately. Not because he simply misses being admired, but because he misses you. He misses the conversations you shared, the way you understood him, the emotional connection that existed between you. Your silence creates a noticeable gap in his life because your presence meant something deeper than just attention. He may start wondering where you are. He may think about the last conversation you had. He may feel the urge to reach out and reconnect because the relationship itself mattered to him. But a man who was mainly enjoying the attention will react very differently. When the attention stops, he may not feel the same emotional urgency. He might notice that the messages have slowed down, but instead of feeling a sense of loss, he simply continues living his life the way he always has. The connection fades quietly because his interest was never truly anchored in emotional investment. And that difference becomes incredibly revealing. Sometimes women stay in confusing situations for months or even years because they are trying to interpret mixed signals. A man may respond sometimes, disappear sometimes, show interest one day and distance the next. This kind of inconsistency creates emotional confusion because it makes you wonder what he truly feels. But silence simplifies everything. When you stop providing attention, you remove the thing that may have been sustaining the connection. Now you can observe what he does when the effort is no longer coming from you. If he values you, he will eventually step forward. He will initiate conversation. He will try to reconnect. He will show that your presence was important enough for him to pursue it. His actions will demonstrate that the relationship mattered to him beyond the attention he was receiving. But if he does nothing, if the silence continues without any attempt to reach out or understand what changed, then you receive a different kind of answer. It may not be the answer you hoped for, but it is still an honest one. Because when attention disappears, only genuine interest remains. And genuine interest always creates some level of effort. A man who truly cares does not easily let a meaningful connection disappear without trying to understand what happened. He becomes curious. He becomes concerned. He becomes motivated to close the distance because the emotional bond matters to him. But a man who is simply enjoying the attention may not feel that motivation. Once the attention stops, the incentive for the connection disappears with it. The silence exposes the foundation of the relationship, and sometimes that foundation turns out to be much weaker than it once appeared. While this realization can feel painful, it is also incredibly valuable. Because many women waste emotional energy trying to prove their worth to someone who was never truly invested in them. They keep giving more attention, more patience, more understanding, hoping that eventually the man will recognize their value and return the same level of effort. But real connection does not require constant persuasion. When someone genuinely values you, they show it through their actions. They protect the connection. They nurture it. They make sure it continues because they do not want to lose it. Silence helps reveal whether that motivation exists. Instead of chasing answers, you allow behavior to speak for itself. Instead of asking someone repeatedly how they feel, you step back and watch what they do when your attention is no longer guaranteed. That observation provides clarity that words often cannot give. Because anyone can say they like you. Anyone can enjoy your company when you are constantly giving energy to them. But when the attention stops, only true emotional investment continues to move forward. And once you see that difference clearly, you gain something incredibly powerful: understanding. You begin to recognize the difference between someone who values your presence and someone who simply enjoyed your effort. That understanding protects your heart in the future because it reminds you that your attention is not something to give endlessly to people who are not willing to meet you halfway. Your attention is valuable. Your emotional energy is valuable. And the right person will not just enjoy receiving it. They will actively work to keep it in their life. One of the most overlooked truths about silence is that it is not only a way to reveal someone else and oppose feelings, it is also a way to reconnect with your own strength. Many women spend so much time focusing on understanding a man and a paw's emotions that they slowly lose sight of their own emotional balance. They start explaining more, trying harder, speaking longer, and giving more energy than the situation truly deserves. What begins as care and effort slowly turns into emotional exhaustion because the connection starts depending almost entirely on one person and a paw's willingness to keep it alive. When a woman constantly explains herself, constantly reaches out, and constantly tries to keep communication flowing, she unknowingly places herself in a position where she is doing most of the emotional work. She becomes the one asking questions, the one seeking clarity, the one trying to fix misunderstandings, and the one trying to hold everything together. Over time, this pattern can make her feel like the entire relationship depends on how much effort she is willing to give. But love and connection were never meant to feel like a one-person responsibility. A healthy relationship naturally includes balance. Both people show interest. Both people care about maintaining communication. Both people make space for each other in a paw's thoughts, feelings, and presence. When that balance disappears, something inside the connection begins to feel heavy. One person feels like they are always pushing the relationship forward, while the other simply responds whenever it feels convenient. This is where silence becomes powerful, not as a strategy to manipulate someone, but as a way to restore emotional balance. When you stop talking, when you stop explaining yourself repeatedly, when you stop chasing responses and attention, you create space. That space does two important things at the same time. First, it gives the other person the opportunity to step forward if they truly care. Second, it allows you to step back and reconnect with your own self-respect. Self-respect grows when you recognize that your time, your energy, and your emotions are valuable. They are not things that should be poured endlessly into situations where they are not being appreciated. When a woman begins to realize this, her perspective shifts. She stops feeling like she must prove her worth through constant effort. Silence becomes a quiet reminder to yourself that you deserve reciprocity. You deserve someone who is curious about your thoughts. You deserve someone who notices when you are quiet. You deserve someone who cares enough to reach out and understand what you are feeling. These things should not have to be demanded over and over again. When you stop talking, you are not giving up your voice. You are simply choosing not to use it in a place where it is no longer being heard. There is a difference between communication and over-explaining. Healthy communication involves two people who both want to understand each other. Over-explaining often happens when one person feels the need to keep justifying their feelings in order to be taken seriously. Silence breaks that pattern. It allows you to step away from the cycle of constantly trying to be understood by someone who may not be making the same effort. And something very interesting happens during that silence. You begin to feel lighter. The pressure to constantly fix things begins to disappear. The need to check your phone every few minutes fades away. The emotional tension of wondering whether you said the right thing or whether you should send another message slowly fades into the background. That quiet space allows you to breathe again. Instead of focusing all your attention on someone else and a past reactions, you begin focusing on your own well-being. You spend more time thinking about what truly makes you happy, what kind of relationship you truly want, and what kind of emotional treatment you deserve. This is where real power begins to return. Because power in relationships does not come from controlling another person and a PA's behavior. Real power comes from understanding your own value and refusing to chase situations that make you feel small or unimportant. When you become comfortable with silence, you send a powerful message without needing to say a word. You show that your presence is a gift, not an obligation. You show that your attention is something meaningful, not something that will always be available regardless of how little effort the other person gives. If a man truly values you, this silence will make him reflect. He will notice the difference. He will feel the absence of your voice and recognize that the connection is not something he can take for granted. That awareness may motivate him to step forward, communicate more openly, and put real effort into maintaining the relationship. But if he does not respond, if the silence continues without any effort from his side, then the silence has still done something incredibly valuable for you. It has protected your energy. Instead of continuing to invest your heart into something that was not being equally valued, you created a boundary. That boundary allowed reality to reveal itself clearly. And clarity, even when it is painful, is always better than remaining trapped in confusion. A woman who respects herself understands that love should feel supportive, not draining. It should feel mutual, not one-sided. It should feel like two people walking toward each other, not one person constantly running while the other stands still. Silence helps you remember that you deserve that kind of balance. It reminds you that your worth is not measured by how much effort you are willing to give someone who does not return it. Your worth already exists within you. The right person will recognize it without needing constant reminders. And when you carry that self-respect within you, your silence no longer feels like loneliness. It feels like peace.